Hi, everybody. My name is Alexandra Janelli. I'm the co-founder at Burble and also hypnotherapist and coach.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Candace Johnson. I'm the inventor of Touchy-Feely Intimacy card game. It's the world's first universal play game with a talk and touch prompt.
Intimacy, let's just jump into it. Intimacy. What is intimacy for you?
Yeah. Well, I like to use the full definition versus what I think most of us have a connection to, which is the euphemism of the word. But the definition of intimacy means a closeness or a bond that's created. That is it.
Okay.
And so you should have intimate relationships with your children, God willing, with your parents or your guardians, with your mentors, with the people that help you sort of navigate how to get through life in a peaceful and tranquil way. Those are the people that you are most intimate with.
Which is interesting because I think for so many people, we've associated intimacy with sexual, context to it.
Which is the branding of the word, right?
Yeah.
Intimacy comes from a place of lingerie. Intimacy comes from a place of underwear, body parts that are unmentionables, right? And then of course, the entire sexual industry has taken on intimacy. So when you have that type of branding, then of course, why would we think of it as anything else? And then of course, second to intimacy is the word pleasure, which now you're doubling down.
Now you double down. Right, exactly. And it's really interesting from my perspective as like a behaviorist to really understand how the mind works, right? Because you aren't born knowing what intimacy looks like or feels like. You learn that, and on a subconscious level, you associate it in. Therefore, if you've associated the word intimacy with something scary or vulnerable or, a private part that makes you feel awkward, every time that comes up, you're going to feel that way. And it's not until someone can show you another perspective that feels good that you're going to shift that. So I think this is such an important conversation of intimacy can be as wonderful as like a conversation with a friend.
I also think a lot of self-esteem comes from knowing what is in their absolute. And it is interesting because while one may have to learn the true understanding of intimacy in terms of a definition, what you also realize once you understand the definition is it's already a practice that you've been utilizing since birth. Yeah. An unwell baby is a baby that doesn't have intimacy. They don't have that skin to skin bond. It is literally the very first directive of a parent is that we must lay baby on parent skin to skin so that there is the bond. The connect. It is the absolute fundamental first thing that is crucial to life and survival. But what we do is we allow, and I hate to use the word society because we are society, but the euphemisms of what is to take out sort of what I like to call that spiritual connection. Spiritual connection is that we already are.
Right.
The problem societally is that we don't have the proper name for it. But do we have the right language so that we're clear?
Well, communication is everything, right? This is where 90% of problems come from is the communication standard of how am I communicating it to you? And are the words that I'm using resonating with you and in line with your belief systems of how you're viewing the situation, right? It's like everything from there just implodes and blows up or comes together or you separate, right? We're humans. We're victims to our circumstances many times and not by choice always or awareness, but we shift that. But
what I think is interesting though is that while you and I are in the same realm of work, right? Because I do think of the game as a therapeutic service. What I love the most about your work is my game is offering the prompt and the opportunity to communicate verbally, to say what you need to say and exercise that physically. But you can allow people to do the work when they struggle to find the words or they can't even identify their feelings yet.
Yeah, and I think that's called the awareness portion of it, right? It's bringing it, it's like, I don't know, and that's okay. So let's discover it. And that's where my job comes in to be the leader of that. Same as your game, right? Asking questions. What would it be like? Not why does that trigger you? It's like, well, what about that triggers you? And so it's really, I love this game. I think it's amazing. I think we should play it and just show people what it's all about.
Yes,
let's go. Can we play?
Okay, yes. So it comes in this cute little bag because we wanted to encourage travel.
Yes.
Like go somewhere, you know, you should not.
Bring it.
Yeah. Because the game isn't just for people you would want in your home. You don't want everybody in your home, right?
Right.
But it is for everyone, period. So
and how cute is this game? Like, I just adore it.
Thank you. Thank you. We have some Easter eggs when it comes to the box, and we're going to start to reveal some of these like design Easter eggs soon. I'm excited about that. So the game comes in 4 levels. I always say it's never about the label because most of us don't know how to correctly identify things anyway. Yep. So worry mostly about 2 things. One, the experiences you have with the person or people you're going to play with. And number 2, your nervous system energy. How do I feel when I'm with you?
Okay.
Right? So level 1, strangers get to know you, first date. Children can operate in level 1. I always say if you don't know where to start, you start at 1, right? What level 1 is, it's about what you know and how you are connected to love.
Okay.
Period. And the reason why children are the best at answering level 1 is because a child who's raised properly only knows love, right? Yeah. They either know you loving on them or the harsh lessons because of love, right? Right. Level 2 is compassion-based therapy. Where there is no love, let me find grace. Because if I can be a little frank, most of us are murdered by people who we know. Yeah. That's why crimes of passions are a real thing. And to flip it, if you do have the ability in you to harm someone, it will likely be someone who enrages you. Right. And so when you have that ability to understand why I'm being triggered into a rage, then I can look back at you and go, oh, but it's because you're hurt. Right. You're hurt, so you're trying to hurt me. And now that I have that compassion-based awareness or therapy to understanding that you're only doing this because you have an issue, well, I have no issue, so I'm just going to continue to be loving to you. Right.
Your triggers aren't my problem.
They're not my problem. So level 3, the closest people to you where trust is not established. Maybe it's been violated in a longer-term relationship, or maybe it's not been established in a shorter-term relationship. Okay. So it's not about a good or bad. It's just simply not there.
Thing that comes to my mind, it's like you're progressing to the next level in a relationship in your dating life, right? Mm-hmm. Right. We're about to get intimate. Mm-hmm. Oh, see, there's that word, right? We're about to maybe get
sexually
intimate. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but also new girlfriends. You know, you have that spark with someone you just met. Oh my God, it's my new best friend, right? But I say any relationship under 4 years, you can say you trust them, but that's an exercise in trust, right? Yes. Like anything over 4 to 7 years, usually you have, at that point, you have death, you have taxes, someone lost a job, gained a job.
Through all those experiences.
So the trust is
solid.
And then level 4, people you love and trust implicitly.
Well, let's do one from each of them and see what it's like.
All right. Okay. Well, you're a pretty adventurous girl. Where do you want to start? Should we start at 1?
We're gonna start at 1.
Okay, we'll start at 1. I'll let you just sort of pick one, and then we'll go from there. And then, are you answering or am I answering? I feel like you should answer.
I'll answer.
Okay, perfect.
All right, here's the card.
Okay. How easy is it for you to apologize or make amends? Do you typically factor blame?
Okay, so let's break that down. How easy is it for me to apologize
or make amends?
I am very quick to apologize, very quick. And I know that about myself because I'm a caregiver. And it's always been my place that I'm conflict avoidant. And like, that's been something that I'm personally working on. So I'm always quick to really get headfirst into it. Be like, let's find a solution. Let's go through this. I don't want you to be mad at me. Even if you end up being mad at me, at least I've said my piece and like, we can move on from that. So that's a very easy thing for me to answer and make amends. I think that's always the goal, but I think it's also for me to be heard, right? How important it is for me to at least tell my side of the story and my perspective, because I think sometimes, you know, we misunderstand people all the time. It's like, they said this, and it's like, well, that didn't sound so bad. It's like, you didn't hear the tone they said it in, right? So, you know, I think make amends. I guess a make amends, if someone's trying to make amends with me, I always want things to be, maybe it's not that we end up loving each other, liking each other, but at least we can understand it, find that respectful place and be like, yeah, okay, we've talked about it. We just don't like each other. Now we can separate. Or it's like, oh, I get it now. And we can make amends and move forward together. But it's at some point, it's like, which way? And then the final part of your question, do you
typically factor blame?
I think there's a part of any stress response when there's conflict that you either go into the anger and the shaming, blaming either towards self or others, or you go into the guilt and like, it's all my fault. And they're normal stress response states when I think through it. I think when I'm really angry, I'm good at shaming and blaming others, right? It's like, well, they did this, and then I'll talk about it with other people. You know, I say all this stuff because I want them to be on my side about it. And then later I'm just like, who cares? Like, it's not about blame. I will constantly take responsibility for my part, sometimes more than my part. So do I typically factor blame? Yeah, I think that it's part of the process. I don't think it's the final resting place that I end up in.
Yeah.
Does that feel right? You know me, so like.
Well, I give you a 5 for your answer. Let me say that.
Yes,
so that's normally what
mean?
you do is it's like after you give your answer, anyone else who's playing the game, me in this instance, would rate your answer on a scale of 1 to 5 based on openness and vulnerability. 1 meaning it's a disconnected answer. You barely thought about it. I don't know why I'm playing with you. I don't feel good.
Ooh, that's a
about
very
this
big
experience
challenge,
with you. Yes, and that's why we say it's all about how do you feel. Down to 5, your answer was well thought out. It was well explained. You took the time to create intimacy by really laying out how you feel. I don't live in your head. The only thing that I kind of, I wouldn't say disagree, but would add is that I feel that you even going to the apology with the amendment in mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm like, let's solve this.
Yeah.
Thanks
I know.
for
just
sharing all that.
Just from that one card, right?
Yeah.
And so normally what we would do is you know, then again, this is why it all matters, not about the label of the relationship you have, but like the energy of the relationship you have, because that emotional rating of 1 through 5 converts to a touch.
Okay.
So there's this card here. It's the emotional conversion card.
And this is an optional portion of the game.
This is an optional, yes. Again, based on your nervous system, how you feel, right? And it doesn't ever have to hold any intention except for what the chemistry of the relationship is. So we gave you a 5. That's improvised, meaning the answer was so well communicated. You should feel empowered to touch however you think is most appropriate for our relationship and the environment in which we're playing the game.
It's so funny because I look at this card and immediately my mind is like, oh my God, this is so intimate and so personal. And not even like intimacy. It's not that bugs me, but it's like, I think of someone giving me a massage, which is too a very sexual experience, but it doesn't have to be, right? Again, it doesn't have to be a nibble. Like, I nibble on my son because he's adorable and yummy, but it's very different than when I nibble on my husband.
For this game in particular, what we do in each level is we have assigned body parts because people are nervous about, well, wait, how are you going to touch me? First thing people ask, oh, how are you going to touch me? Everyone, freezes up. Number 1, we're all consenting adults.
Right. And if you
we
don't
decide
want
our
to do this,
yes,
we say no.
And it's amazing how many adults have to be reminded, you are safe, right? These are just my words and my prompts. You can do nothing. You can do everything. I'm just giving you the information for opportunity, and then allow where you say no and where you tighten up to realize that maybe these are the things that you need to. Why do you
this
tighten
is your
up?
Work, right? Like understand it, bring awareness to it, so that if you want, and this is where I come into work with clients, is like if you want to shift it and it feels problematic, we don't make problems. We just want to understand.
This is the opportunity.
This is where your work is.
So in level 1, the body parts are forehead, cheek, hands, feet. And so if we together chose the body part and, let's say we happened upon hand.
Okay.
Then now it is up to you to improvise on my hand that physically shows me what it is that you just did with me emotionally, right? Emotionally, you shared something that let me get a bit more comfortable, brought closeness. Now, how can you do that exact same thing with a physical touch to my hand?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking through, like, based on your reply to my answer, right? Like how I felt hearing how I was so genuine and what have you. How do I want to reciprocate that, like, appreciation for being seen in that way?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I'm like, what would that look like? Either on your hand, your forehead. I'm going to do your hand.
Okay.
I'm just going to be like,
yes.
a squeeze. So it's a squeeze.
Yes, and I do. I feel that. I feel the energy in that, right?
Okay, cool.
And if you notice, Oprah does that a lot, where she'll hear something profound and she'll go, it's, there
so
is
funny,
that,
yeah.
yes. But again, because we don't think about it
Right.
in that way, we forget that we already exercise these things. And when I have those conversations with those people who are uninterested, there's always an element of unsafety attached to it.
Oh, I mean, that's our biggest thing, right? It's like we all just want to feel safe, secure. And how do we create those safe, secure places for ourselves?
Okay, level 2.
Level 2.
Okay.
This is the one.
Yeah.
Right here.
Okay. This is the one. Okay. Oh, I love this. Okay, this is perfect. And I mean this both professionally and personally.
Okay.
Okay. Name one way I could encourage you.
Ooh, what a great question. Oh, that's so interesting. So Candace, little backstory, Candace and I, it took us a while to figure out each other's like sort of vibes and mission and everything. And I think we both have very different styles, which we've both learned to like understand and respect and like move with. I think encouragement for me is allowing me in my weak moments not to tell me what to do, because like I think it's always, I've been very trained in my own mind that like I know my answers, I just can't get there. But I know my process is that I always go into like what I call a stress responsive victim zone, where it's like I become so at the effect of my life that I like fall apart, go inward, and then like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. That sometimes I just need to borrow other people's confidence that they see in me, where it's like, listen, here's how I see you. And I know you're gonna get through this. I know you've got this. I know you're gonna figure it out. I hear it with my clients a lot where they'll tell a story and the story doesn't matter. And once I get to know clients really well, I'll be like, okay, now tell me that story without any words and only using the emotions you went through with it. Typically, a client is telling me all the details because they want me to be on their side, right? It's like I'm always on their side, and I think they forget that. But we need to justify to other people a lot of the time why we're feeling that way.
Number 1, I give you a 5.
Yes.
Well, because you gave me a couple of things to consider. The way I have really had to have this lesson banged into my head. There is a such thing as looking so well that people don't think you can relate.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so unrelatable.
Yeah. So now
it's so outside my perspective of like,
And so now all I'm doing is sharing my actual experience. It's not advice at all. I'm literally sharing an experience that I had, and I'm saying, hey, try this. And I have also had it backfire to me that someone will then come to me later and go, hey, you really hurt my feelings when you said it this way, because it made me now feel like, well, what I'm doing isn't good enough. Well, maybe what you're doing isn't good enough.
Right. Well,
maybe what you're doing isn't good enough.
Right.
But also, I don't want you to have a feeling of failure connected to me.
Well,
I would like you to think about it in connection to yourself, but I don't think you're going to get there.
Right. And that's the ego coming in, right? Yeah. Where it's like, you affected me. It's like, no, I just told you a story. You took it in that way. It's like what's said and what's heard. And I think this is a huge conversation piece, right? It's always, right, here's what they said. And again, when I asked you, I was like, what did you hear? Yeah. It's like, this is what I heard. And it's, I mean, you use this in couples therapy, use it in like just general. It's like, I didn't say that though, but that's what you heard. And those are your triggers and there's your work. But it takes that mindfulness to know. Yeah. And highlight that. And that's why we have the rating system. Yep. I feel like what you've heard versus what you said can be a bit more blamey when you don't have a facilitator like yourself there. Oh, this is trigger, I'm anger. Telling you go right into reactive state. So then the 1 through 5 isn't about, that's what I said, like the 1, it's not about failure. It's about, oh, okay, well, I said all that and you didn't even hear me. Okay, well then now let's try it again. How can we have these communications and sort of clear up the lines of communications without facilitating blame, but then also getting a reward function, which is why the touch is so great if you're not a verbal person. So let's see, erogenous zone. Yeah, so for level 2. Chin, calves, neck, and shoulders. Yep. And I get to improvise. Yep, you can improvise on chin, calf, neck, or shoulders. Again, most body parts that, non-sexual body parts, that could be, if the intention is there, but also
are exposed.
Well, this feels weird, but I'm going to go with it anyway.
Okay.
The first thing, it's like I wanted to touch your chin and just be like,
I love it.
It's almost like a little key tapping.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. And any woman over 40 knows that, when those chin hairs start to come in.
What chin hairs? You mean the 20 that I pulled off this morning?
I've started being really honest about it because I'm like, I want to be a beautiful woman. I love being a beautiful woman. I feel like I lean into that.
Yeah.
But there are the changes. And I want to be honest about that too. I want to be just as honest about the attractive things about me as I am about the others. And so I love my chin rub now because I'm like, it needs all the love it can get. Because
yeah. I'm sorry, go this way. So let's go to level 3, and you're going to pick this time. So
okay. So should I just pick this one?
The one.
Okay.
Share an important lesson about love.
Oh, I love this. Okay, actually,
just one.
Yeah. Actually, there's something that you said earlier. When you were sharing with your clients, you asked them to revisit the story, but just share their emotions. I actually discovered in 2021, at the very end of 2021, that I actually have to start doing the opposite. Telling the story and removing my emotions. And it's called the practice of what is. It's a Buddhist practice of living in just what is, not how you feel about it.
And how did this relate that to love for me?
So the way it relates to love is because we are all human. Every person who's in trouble will say the same thing. Well, I'm not perfect, right? It's like, we can retire that. Yeah. No one's perfect. But when you are at your worst, it is up to me, out of love, to somehow not only forgive you, but really move past it. And one way for me to more easily move past things is by not allowing myself to get so hurt, because people are human. And so you are going to disappoint me. You are going to bore me. You are going to disgust me. You are going to make me miserable. You're going to do all those things, but you're also going to do the opposite. It allows me to prioritize my temper tantrums. If you hurt me and you hurt me and you hurt me and you hurt me all on the same day, we're supposed to bleed out. You know what I mean? Or I can say, because I take my feelings out of it, okay, well, you tried to hurt me, number one. So now I can say, okay, well, was this intentional or was it not? That helps me decide a lot. I had someone, I'll be really honest. I had a man I was dating ask one of my very good girlfriends who I introduced him to out on a date. Weird. My reaction, honest to God, was, oh, he's in a lot of pain. Because he's a good-looking man. He can date anybody he wants. I guess he doesn't know the kind of love I have in my girl circle. The very first thing my girlfriend did was call me and say, hey, did you know this guy asked me out? Did you tell him that he could? Right? Had he known the kind of love I have in my life in his own, he would already have known if he really wanted to date her, he would have already asked me.
Right.
But he doesn't know that kind of love, I suppose. Right? So that, to me, is how I lean into the whole, that's the love lesson is, could I have been hurt? I could have been fiery hurt. Honestly, I could have lit that man's car on fire. I really could have. It was designed to hurt me and show he had no consideration for me whatsoever. But love lives in my life. So I really had nothing but, and I still sit in this, like, I hope he's okay, because that's a crazy thing to try to do.
Well, it's so interesting, right? Because that's from a third perspective to offer. Because what I hear also is an assumption that he was even thinking about you when he did it, right? Or that there was no thought about you or something.
But it's one or the other. That's the whole thing. There's either no consideration for me whatsoever, which is traumatizing, or it's full consideration that it would hurt me. Also traumatizing. So it really doesn't even matter which one. And because I'm only operating in what is, I don't even have to take myself down the rabbit hole of, well, which is it? Is he trying to hurt me or does he not care about me at all?
And this is the coolest part, right? Because this is where I get with my clients. I'm like, you're not in their head, right? And I'm like, stop leaving your experience. Come back to how you felt about it and what you want to do about it.
It's been, that is the love lesson. And it has been tremendously helpful, and it stopped me from embarrassing myself in moments where I thought something bad was happening and I didn't react, and then turns out, oh, that's not what was happening at all.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah.
Actions taken out of anger always lead to embarrassment.
Always.
Yeah, that was a big lesson.
So that is,
Okay, I'm gonna give that a 4, but I can't really justify why it's not a 5 in my mind, but like a 4 feels very like solid and strong.
Yeah.
So that's where I landed. And here's your emotional conversion. You get to kiss.
Well, wait, don't scream yet. Now
Okay,
you have to read the body parts.
You get to kiss my lips, my upper back, my knees, or my lovely outer thigh hair. And I can say no to this.
Yeah, we both. Well, 2 things that could happen, right? Number 1, I can go back in and answer the question more, which would take us to, hopefully, possible level 5, in which case I'd be able to improvise. But you know what I would like to do is I actually would like to kiss your upper back.
Okay, girl, go on.
This is one of these things that I've started doing with my girlfriends a lot lately, where because I do a lot of like hugging from the back. You see, you grab from the back, and I just like kiss the shoulder, and I think it's so sweet. It's just like one of these like.
Like you do nearly as bad as my brain is like, this is creepy. She's gonna lick me. Like
no.
Isn't it funny how if a kid did it to me, it'd be one thing, but because we've sexualized adults. Now, if a man did it to me, I'd probably be much more concerned. Now, if you had asked me when I was a teenager, can men and women be just friends? I mean, there's that sexual tension. I think there will always be some kind of interesting sexual tension, but again, it becomes, would it be acted on?
That question gets posed a lot. I always say that it really is up to the individual's experience of discipline. That's really it. It comes down to that. Discipline, and then of course relationship with lust and danger and adventure,
belief
systems, desire, and also what do you find sexual? There's some people who really do get off on secret sex. Those people cannot be friends with the attracted sex, because that is the thing that turns them on. There are other ones of us. I'll speak for myself, for instance. I've always been able to get whatever I want, so I don't have to lie about anything.
Right.
And so as a result of that, I can be friends with a man because if I wanted him, then I would have him. That's how I see it. And so I even share that when I'm dating currently. And so when I do have, new lovers in my life and I'm introducing them to man or woman that is in my life, I'm always able to explain why any person has this role. Hey, this is why I only see a girlfriend once a month versus every day. Yeah. Hey, these are girlfriends that I must see 3 times a week because they uplift me. Hey, these are guy friends who I must have in my life because they provide these types of insights, where I'm a bit more narrow-minded or a bit more naive.
Or I keep this guy around because he makes me feel beautiful all the time.
I can tell you that one of my girlfriend's husbands has been in my house the last few weeks just fixing things around my home because I'm a single woman.
That's so nice.
Can
not like he's asking for a blowjob on the way out.
He would not.
Exactly. All right, so there we go. Men and women can be friends. It's just there's boundaries, respect, right? Because let's face it, because we've all, I think boundaries is a big word. I've seen relationships in the past where it's like you start as friends, right? That's the intention, and then little innuendos slip, and you let those boundaries in. And then right? It's not always like an open door. It's like the door just creeps open.
That's why boundaries for me is not a word I even care about. I know that's a hot topic word. I think it's a word people can identify. To me, it's discipline. Discipline and discernment. There are certain things I'm never doing. There doesn't need to be, I'm not doing it. You don't have to put bars on that window. I'm never jumping out of it. I'll get close to it. Maybe I'll press my hands on it, but I don't need a guardrail. I'm not doing it.
Right.
Period. Now,
does that come down to a core value of yours?
No, I'll be honest with you. Listen, I think the trap of a woman is a bunch of people telling you what you can and can't do. And if you follow these rules, then hopefully no one will ever call you a whore, or hopefully your intentions will stay pure. And I think purity culture is a thing in this country that's shoved down girls' throats, which is why we then...
Good girls don't do that.
Good girls don't do. They don't say anything. They don't make them up. They don't do a bunch of stuff. But I was never interested in being good. I was interested in doing what felt great for me. Because what I learned in all of the rules is that I'm never going to please anybody. I'm never going to please a husband. I'm never going to please a boyfriend. I'm never going to please my girlfriends. I'm never going to please anybody else. Don't be too pretty. Don't be too ugly. Don't be too fat, but don't be too skinny. Don't be too smart, but don't be too quiet. Don't be too... it's too many things. So now that I'm being ping-ponged everywhere, I learned that maybe at the age of 9, I was like, I'm just going to do what I want.
That's a really young age to learn that.
Oh, it was young, but I also think it's because I say my mother was a feminist. She told me, live free in your love and live your life to the fullest.
Wow.
And my dad was an athlete. He literally thought he was God's gift. So that was the role models that I had. And so, yes, of course, they were sort of navigating the impurity culture and like, hey, this is how you behave. This is the construct of a young woman who's going to be successful and revered and respected. And of course, your what do they call it? Your how people perceive you is supposed to be everything. But then I realized really early, like, but none of those things are mine. Those are all accolades I get, God willing.
Right.
I can't even. And then at the end of it, I still have to lay in bed with just me, who either was allowed to roar or wasn't.
Yeah.
And for me, it just became a lot more self-satisfying as I started practicing it very, very young. I know it was 9 because it was when my parents divorced. And I had to make that decision to start being really honest about what I did and did not like. And then seeing how, one, getting punished for it, but also sitting my remote in punishment and going, well, I'm happy I said it.
See, I think that's very interesting. I've been like struggling with this lately. And the idea of, I look back at some of the things that have caused me the most shame and guilt in my life. And for example, a situation where I cheated on a partner. And at the time I did it, it was like, I fully wanted to do it. I knew I was doing it. Like, it was so genuine that I wanted to do it. But again, there are consequences to these actions, and the consequences were pretty severe in terms of like the aftermath of it all and how awful that feels, right? To the point where it's like, I will never do that again because the consequences were so painful. And I think there's this level of shame. But again, it was such a purely genuine desire that, you know, I've talked about in therapy with my therapist, where it's like, can you trust your genuine, pure wants and desires without the fear that there's consequences to it? I actually think it's great for my personal relationship with my husband, right? Like, I would never cheat on him. I just love him too much. I respect him too much, and like all those things. But how does that serve me in business? Not so great sometimes, because I'm so worried about consequences of actions that sometimes I become stagnant.
To me, the greatest of it is, you know, I do think there are certain lessons that can be fed to us. Hey, this is the straight and narrow path. You go this way, you know, nothing will ever hurt you. You'll always be fine, right?
No, there's always hurt around every corner.
That's the thing. But also, even if I'm never hurt, do I feel anything? How do you know what feels good if you don't know what feels bad? Or how do you know, all of my greatest achievements aren't great because I've won them. They're great because I decided I was going to do it.
Yeah. You have to know what you want first. And it's negotiation 101, right? You have to know what you want going into it to be able to negotiate a boundary. Level 4.
Should we do level 4? Okay.
Let's do level 4. All right. So, cut the dick.
Cut it. Okay.
Ooh, girl, we're going to love this one.
Okay.
What does loving me feel like?
Aww.
Like, it's so tender.
Yes. I love this question for us. Loving you feels very humbling. So with you, because you are such a great example of coming forward as just a full human being first, I then will sometimes sit back and think about you and think about how many other accomplishments you have. You do have a successful marriage. You do have children who love you. You have the spa. You have Burble, right? Like, you have these clients. And then before all of this, you had that whole life in New York, right? So like, which, you know, well documented, well, you know, respected, well published. And sometimes it's not until I'm going through like a bio of yours, sometimes I go, oh my God, like, this woman isn't just my lovely friend who opens her heart and her doors to me and allows for me to be my full self, but you're also a person who does that multiplied beyond. So loving you is, and this is going to sound so selfish, but I think this is what love does for us, is it helps humble me into feeling like, okay, then maybe I am walking in the right path, because it's because if you receive my love and you are calling me a girlfriend, then I must be doing something really well.
Yes. Yeah, if you're in my inner circle, you're in like Flynn. So thank you for sharing that. And like, when I hear that, it makes me feel very vulnerable. And like, it's so interesting because you have to learn to take a compliment. Why is it so awkward? People giving too.
It's not even a compliment, it's the truth.
Yeah, fair enough. And it's funny because I always said in work, I want to be seen as a human first. Like, I will always lead being like, I'm kind, I'm caring. Like, people buy into you. It doesn't matter everything else. So thank you for seeing that. And like, I'm glad that I come across that way. Now, because I'm selfish, I want to answer this one also.
Okay, yes. I love it.
What does loving you feel like? Loving you feels empowering. It feels eye-opening, and it feels at times really like chaotic's not the word, but it's like it's kind of like taking a bottle and shaking it for me. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I think there are these ways where it's like sometimes I feel like I live in this vacuum where I'm like do, and then you come in and you're like, here's what I think, and there are times when like having a strong opinion sort of makes me like back up, but I find myself with you leaning in, being like, tell me more, even if I don't agree with it. I'm like, I just want to know your perspective because I love and respect you. But I'm like, you could tell me like ants are the next president of the United States, and I'd be like, it's fucking crazy, but tell me more, because like I might be able to buy into that because I love you and trust you. So it's like all of those things make me feel like curious and interested. And I think if I'm not curious, then I'm bored.
Yeah.
So, but I like your strength and I think you keep around people, not you, but people. I keep people around me that also I find inspiring, where it's like, I wish I had the ability to say more and speak my truth. And I'll never forget the day that I was having horrible anxiety and like a total deep spiral. And you're like, you know what your problem is? And I was like, tell me, girl, speak louder for me in the back of the room. And you were like, you're just not saying what you want and what you actually are feeling. I'm like, no, I don't know. And you were like, no. And you laid it out in the situation. I was like, yeah, I'm actually not saying what I want, which is, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to hurt someone and da-da-da-da. And you're like, say it or don't say it. It's up to you at this point. But I was like, shit. Yeah, my spiraling is because I'm not sitting in my truth.
And I think that's when I start crossing boundaries in our friendship, is because it is nice to be able to have an advocate to say, okay, well, maybe you can say it for me easier, and this way someone can receive it better. I don't know, how do you facilitate those types of things? But I also think, like I said, it can also sometimes be like
well, I think the shift we had in our friendship wasn't you coming in and being like, well, here's what you should do. It's you being like, here's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Like, here's the perspective I have from a third party outside. And it's like, so can you stop the spiral now? And it's like, right, the whole, you're not saying what you really feel. And it's like, all of a sudden it was like, kaboom. It was like, oh yeah, I'm not, am I? I think I'm always looking, like, it's like I have to ask for forgiveness when I say things. And it's like, oh my God. He's getting to be an adult.
Yeah, I know. All the work, right? The professional work, the emotional work, the physical work.
Yeah. So check this out. We get to touch chest, inner thighs, belly, or booty. What do you think about doing like a booty rub?
Okay. We do a booty bump. That's really just a dance.
I mean, that's love. If you can't do that with your friends. Oh my gosh, I love this game. And it's not like, I mean, the kiss thing still gets me, but again, like,
I'm telling you, start to think about that. Like when you're, well, of course, yes, you can blow a kiss. Of course, that works. Like, right? Like, we do air kisses all day.
It's not like, I'm like,
yeah. I mean, unless it's that kind of environment, right? Like, but the back kiss has been my new thing. I've been telling people, we all need to start touching.
Cute.
The upper back is where your lungs are.
It's like, also where your responsibility sits.
Oh.
Haven't you been walking around like this all day?
That's true. That's why in level 2, when we do corporate events, we say it's for level 2, right? Chin, calves, neck, shoulders. Your calves is where you hold a lot of tension, right?
Is level 2 always the same erogenous zones?
Oh, yeah. Each level has the same set of erogenous zones, so you already know what you're going into, right?
Fair enough.
Shoulders is where a lot of your tension sits. A neck is just attached to it, so it's very easy, but it is a very more, I actually think that your neck is more sensual than your shoulders. And then again,
but why? We made it that way.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a lot of trust, right? You are where my esophagus is, like, right? Like, you are able to really, like, it's all, you can guide me more with just my neck. It's the only thing you can stop me from breathing, right? It's
throat chakra.
So, yeah, which can be both very erotic feeling, to know someone has that ownership of you in that way.
So wild.
Whereas shoulders, it feels more like, trying to release pressure.
I want to know, okay, so it's really interesting because the box, right? Like, I remember at first when you were like, we were talking retail space, and I was like, satisfy your connection emotionally, sensually, and then sexually. And I was like, now, I've obviously gone through like lawsuits and like business stuff, and I was like, can I put something on my shelf that says sexually, right? Like, and I was like, oh, that's a very decisive and divisive potential product. But I think having played it, it doesn't have to be that way, right? It's like, there is nothing, this is level 4, there is nothing sexual of like, what does loving me feel like on this card? And even, erogenous zones, obviously erogenous is a very sexually charged word in a lot of people's brains, but like, you don't even have to play that part.
How you lean in is how you lean in. But to be clear, because we are all grown-ups, even though we don't want to take responsibility, the healthier you are, the better your sex life will be. Sex does not mean intercourse, right? Those are two different things.
Say more.
I want to be careful with my words, but this is the truth. I'll speak for myself. I can experience pleasure on the highest realm because I am open to what feels good to me. When I go to a restaurant, the reason why I can have such a beautiful dining experience is because I'm not watching my weight or a calorie. I am concerned with, what does the chef specialize in? What is the most delicious thing on the menu? And who am I about to share these plates of food in this experience with? That's why I enjoy it the most. When I'm having a conversation with a girlfriend, I'm not worried about what I shouldn't say. I'm not worried about how I will appear. I'm not concerned with the perception of things. I'm excited about the fact that you and I are going to have a cup of tea over being real and sharing our true experiences. That's what feels good. When I'm with a lover, particularly one that I am fully partnered with, what I like is that I know, number one, I'm in a safe space, so I don't have to make all the rules. If he wants to touch me a certain way, and I know that this is a person who reveres me, loves me, only wants for my body and my mind to be satisfied in love, then I'm not really concerned about the shape of my body or what marks are on there or lack thereof or what's too loose or what's too blah, 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 because I'm in a loving space with someone who cares.
So safety, so I'm hearing you say, when you're safe, rules don't need to be there.
When you're fully leaned into love, then the safety is already implied. Love really can't exist where there's no safety.
Right.
And so if all of your rules are there because of safety concerns, then likely there's no love or there's a lack thereof or potential for you to move into a space where there's more.
Right.
And so when you're thinking about it from that way, right, even the way you love your children is indicative of how you love yourself and how you love your family and how much you can receive and how much you can give. So with this game, when we say, emotionally, sensually, and sexually, it's not to say that every play means that you're going to be humping, though, if you're with someone who you have that.
Right?
Yeah, right? But it also could be that you have such a wild night with your girlfriends, feeling that love and feeling that energy, that when you go home, you do sort of then release that energy onto your partner. We've definitely had game nights where we said, like, oh, like, this was a great night, but I'm ready to go see my husband now. Right? Yeah. Because it's not about it being sexual in this environment. It's about synergizing your endorphins in a way and your confidence in a way that you now feel empowered to be a great lover in all of the ways in you move. Very few of us have a really good day and then go be like mean to people. Right. Usually you're walking around happy. Oh, I have a great meeting. Why are you smiling so much? Oh, it was just such a good meeting. I don't even know what to do with myself. I want to jump up and down. Yeah. Same situation.
Have you ever, okay, so any card game, right? Doesn't matter, Monopoly, Taboo, Scrabble.
Uno, one of my favorites.
can turn really intense, right?
Yes.
And I mean, I have played Taboo with people where like all of a sudden the couples are like fighting, screaming at each other, and it's like, whoa, how like, this is just a game. Have you seen that happen here? And I would imagine that there's a part of this where the judgment portion in terms of the scaling can lead to the ego coming out pretty strong.
So what's interesting, and I love that you use the word ego, because that's one. I mean, I'm still temperamenting, I'm still working with my own ego because I realize that I have one. But that's why I created a game, right? You would imagine that that's the only place the ego doesn't have to live, is in a game. And typically when it does is when it, turns not well, but then it's not about the game at all.
Oh, it's not, right? It's about the relationship symptoms.
Correct. And not even really the relationship. It's about whichever one is making it an ego-driven situation.
Yeah.
So I think what my only conscious...
what advice, I guess, would you have for people if that comes up?
Well, number one is to remember that all the questions are positive, purpose-driven questions. There is no gotcha moment in any of the cards. That's number one.
This is not Mousetrap.
Right. Or hungry hippo when it comes to sexual.
Dude, let's face it, hungry hippo, I could be a hungry hippo all day long.
But I tell people when it comes to the sexual part, this isn't a free-for-all grab-all,
right.
And I think that's what people are worried about when they hear about the sexual part. Oh, I don't want to be groped. Well, you shouldn't be groped.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's not the intention.
Then your answers should always come from the point of view also of that. And even when you are moving into the game, who are you playing with? Okay, if you're playing with someone who, let's say you're playing with a husband of 15 years and you guys just got into a little spat, then that helped dictate which level you play. Maybe you should be playing the compassion level 2, even though you've been married for a certain number of years, and you could do level 4.
Right, so drop down.
Drop down when you know that you have those sort of like those boundaries. And then also, it's not just about levels. Sometimes scour through the cards and just simply take out the ones that, could start a little something, right? Anything can be started out of anything. I don't know everyone's relationship, but these are a good starting point. There's a question in level 3, I believe. It might be in level 4, but I actually can't remember. And it says, what qualities of mine make me or would make me a good parent? So that's implied based on if there are children or not. And it really isn't about the kids at all. It's about, am I a maternal person? Am I a paternal person? Do you see me as a caregiver? It's
also going to give you a lot of insight of the person saying, like, if you ask me that, like, what qualities are important to me too.
Mm-hmm. So it really is a free-for-all. But if you are dating someone, and I have been in the situation, I dated someone long-term who I was never going to have kids with them because I didn't think that they would be a good parent to my children.
Yeah.
So that's obviously a divisive question. So maybe that's a question that you leave to the side. So that's how I always like to say. And at the end of the day, if you can't be in the right mindset to receive love, then everything is going to sound like an attack. And that has nothing to do with the game.
There you go.
Yeah.
Can't keep the heat out of the kitchen. Don't go in the kitchen.
Yeah. But it should all be about feeling good. And none of the questions are sexual.
No.
Yeah,
and I think
that was important to say. Yeah.
Agreed. Well, this has been really fun, Candy.
This was amazing. I loved it.
Me too. So we'll have to play again.
Yes.
So join us again where we're going to continue talking love, life, and living from perspectives of Candace and Alexandra. Namaste.